very warm welcome to Deciphering Design with Dikshu. Dikshu Kukreja, an internationally acclaimed architect, someone who has his architecture degree from Harvard. He has his company's global presence in England, Tokyo and New York. Let's go across to Dikshu to know more about today's episode.
As sustainability becomes a buzzword, we are dared to look beyond the available options and rethink the ways to pursue living. The intricacies of karigari in fashion and architecture resonate with similar sounds. Over the years, the two subjects have backed each other with ideas and relevancy. Both use elements such as symmetry, balance, harmony and rhythm to form eclectic designs. But is there a common meeting ground? And better yet, one might still ask, what inspired this collaboration? Chogas and chhajjas, jalis and kalamkari, can you weave a connection? The layers and detailed work of the Mughal era perhaps can be deemed as a starting point, with Qila and Mahal embellished with prestigious and one-of-a-kind craftsmanship. The chogas, not behind, were encrusted with the rarest stones. While the verandas and semi-courtyard spaces kept their magnificent edifices well ventilated, their dressmaking brought a similar comfort and the trend of long robes, dilja and shalwar, was established. In today's episode, we decipher the geometries, draperies and trends that will lead the way forward in coming times. Their brand goes by the motto, always have a reason to dress up. Democratizing Indian couture through a modern India narrative and with a luxury twist, we have with us this evening the powerful fashion duo of Shantanu and Nikhil Mehra. Welcome, guys.
Oh, good to be here.
Yes, such a pleasure. I know we've had many chats in each other's homes and even holidaying together on the beaches of Goa about the fusion or the blurring of boundaries rather between architecture and fashion. I want to know, Nikhil, why don't you go first and tell us, what do you feel has been the transition or the movement in fashion through ages? Because India has had this rich history, whether it's in architecture or it's in fashion. We've really enjoyed a great history. So walk us through a little bit about how fashion has moved and more so in contemporary times.
I think fashion has got a lot to do with living spaces. We can talk about Delhi as a city. I mean, it's a historical city. You are surrounded and encapsulated by amazing monuments. We've been grown up visiting the tombs or the parks. Red Fort used to be something that you see the flag being hoisted, India Gate, the Lutyens. These are spaces that actually made us who we are. Also, the same spaces had a sense of influence in design when it came to fashion. If you remember our dad's times, they would wear kurtas which were drop shoulders, a little longer, covering the knees. The churidars were rather fitted, but the kurtas were equally loose. A lot of the references came from the architectural well-being of the city. And when you look at the architectural well-being, you also realize that everything that was made in Delhi was based on its temperature back then and the seasons. So the color palettes like terracotta, and then going to Dholpur when it came to Lutyens Delhi and the pure whites, they were representative of the various seasons that mainly Delhi had. It enjoyed all 4 seasons. That also took effect into the clothing that were created by designers or homemakers back then in the 70s. Of course, when we now look again at Delhi, we as Shantanu Nikhil as a brand, we are so inspired by Delhi's architecture that we've come back and gotten the same structure and fluidity, but given it a modern twist by making it slightly more fitted, younger, more cutting edge. The details that you see in the architecture are quite representative even in the clothes we do when it comes to the asymmetrical shapes, the crossover front necklines of the bangalas, taking cue from the beautiful details of the buildings. You'll see representation of that in the coins or in the buttons that we've created. So there is a lot of play. We didn't think of it like that when we started. We really loved Delhi and India and its architecture. But now when we look back, we realize there are a lot of these coinciding facts that are coming together in fashion and in architecture.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, on the face of it, many times you don't realize, but the deeper you go into it, you start realizing how much there is between the two. When you talk about Shantanu and Nikhil as a brand, I mean, all 3 of us went to DPS together, and then here comes this powerful brand, as you know, everyone today knows, Shantanu and Nikhil. How did the journey happen? You were studying business in Ohio, and then you were working there for General Motors. So you were in a different genre altogether. How did this idea come together, or come up rather, of you both joining hands?
It's bizarre, you know, we may be siblings by birth, but we were absolutely chalk and cheese. We are chalk and cheese still, even today, but there was nothing in common. Leave aside ever thinking of even working together. But I think while we were growing up, we had immense respect for each other. He was, I felt that I was obviously more structured. No sense of fashion. I knew how to wear my t-shirts, I knew how to wear my jeans, crisp shirts when going out. Athletic I was, so I used to play a lot of tennis, so a lot of my athletic wear used to be my staple wardrobe. While he was at a given point in time trying to paint his white shirt or white t-shirt with something. So he was on the crazier side of it. So I knew that there is some creative bent in the family, and so let him do that talk.
So, you know, you guys have brought in what I always believe is also a very important yet ignored aspect in design, and that is the business side of it, or the structure, as you call it, side of it. Because just being creative, it's very, very important. Obviously, that's the soul of any design. But with creativity comes some kind of a semblance, a structure, the business aspect, or dealing with society. Otherwise, you could be sitting in your studio, churning out one design after another, but where do you correlate to what the masses want or what people want? So I think that has been a very important aspect, I guess, that you brought to the team.
Yeah, I think that's what was lacking at that point in India. You know, you had a handful of couturiers following a similar norm. We just felt that let's break that stereotypical notion and let's create a brand which is, it's out there on the PR front, it's out there on the marketing front, but at the same time it has its subtlety and it has a balance of minimalism, which was obviously very anti-trend even at that point in time. So it was, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Like, you know, you have a similar story, Dikshu. You've come from a Harvard School of Urban Design and Architecture, and then you shifted gears, you went to Harvard Business School. So I'm sure there's something that drove you, but that drove you from not only being a designer, but also trying to understand what number crunching and how do you understand business of architecture and design. But you were all alone, right? In my case, I could make that decision because I could see a spark here, and I think we very well knew each other that that we are probably the best combination of art and commerce, but art will always be in the forefront. Sure. Commerce will never come and push it. So it's still the same. It's still art, but art that has become a little bit more understandable, more sustainable, and commerce just follows.
Right.
There's no art, there's no commerce.
How do you manage?
Yeah.
Considering like our roles are very well defined.
Yeah. So I guess it's two parts of mind which are always kind of going together, because of course, like Shantanu is saying, you know, the art side of it has to take the forefront, because that, like I call it, the soul of any design aspect. It comes from there. But with it, we need to understand that just creating that without having a sense of organization to it, a sense of being able to communicate it, misses the point. So that's where the other aspects comes to it too.
Do you feel sometimes like when, and as a designer to a designer I'm speaking with, sometimes when you get a project or you get an opportunity which is so driven by commerce, do you lose yourself somewhere, or do you feel that, okay, I will maybe give not 100%, this project doesn't need 100% of me, I'll do it with 60% and we will still be fine? Does that happen to you?
You know, it can be tempting, or there can be circumstances which can try to push you in that direction. I believe it's like the waves that come when you're at a beach. You just have to hold firm. And it's part of your philosophy or your culture of your organization. Like, yes, there are instances where we could have gone in that direction, that, you know, you feel, okay, this is not priority A project. But we've stood firm. We've always believed that whatever project we take up, it could be the smallest, or, you know, the country's largest, or the world's tallest, or whatever it might be in terms of those scale and proportions, but it's a project at the end of the day. And for me, buildings always hold this importance that, you know, buildings, I believe, are for posterity. We can go, and we will go far sooner than the buildings we design. So I think it's very, very important that we keep that ethos, and fortunately we've been able to do that.
Do you look back at some of your buildings and you feel, oh my God, this was not what I wanted to do?
Oh, it happens. It often happens, because, you know, it's a long, arduous process from when you conceive it, conceptualize it, to by the time the baby grows up and is standing on his or her feet and talking to the world. And in that process, in our case especially, even yours, I guess, but a lot of other players come into it. It could be the construction agencies, it could be clients who change, like if you design for the government, the officials change over time. Developers have different notions because they keep changing their priorities or their brief based on the market. So there are so many things that keep happening in that process, that it's very, very important to keep that kind of sanctity of it, what you conceived, to seeing it realized. But yes, there have been times like that, surely.
I find it fascinating. Shantanu is always scared after a collection that is launched at Fashion Week. When he comes up to me and he just looks at me and, and I'm like, I'm not happy. And then he's like, oh my God, now he's going to come back to work. And then I come back to work and the team is like, what happened? I said, we're going to make some changes. So Shantanu is always a little scared of that.
That's been happening for 20 years. So
You got used to
yeah, because he has the license of art being at the forefront, so he can always have the liberty of saying that. But having said that, I think that's what stood us in good stead. We've been able to evolve as artists, as designers. We've been able to. I think that a bit of fearlessness is definitely required in design, be it architecture or fashion. You got to change gears when you feel the society is changing, and then what is it that you do to instigate a spark in what you do with your design. And I think that's what we did with our menswear some 5 or 6 years ago, when we realized that menswear is an ignorant part of the business for many a designer. I think women have always been at the forefront. And that's when we felt that how do we bring our men to be the center of attention, because they play an equal role in an occasion or a ceremony, or for that matter, any evening.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Now that Shantanu's told you how masculine his thought process is, do you feel your buildings are more masculine or feminine?
So there was a time when I came back to India, and there was this whole phase where I was designing buildings, and it was a joke in the office that, you know, goodness, when it comes from his sketch, it's the hardest one to follow, because every building had a curve. I had that sort of a streak in me where I felt that buildings cannot be these harsh sort of insertions into our city or into nature. So they need to be more soft, more fluid, and in that sense more curvaceous. So whether we call it, it's more sort of a feminine kind of a design, I'm not so sure, but yes, it was that aspect of it, and it still continues to be. But I do believe that whatever it might be, whether it eventually takes a perceivable masculinity to it or femininity, the point is that it should be contextual. I always speak this again and again, that the building must seem that it belongs there. Whatever we create as a built form, it should appear that it so naturally belongs there rather than forcefully inserts itself or exerts itself onto that site.
Is this coming from your relationship with your dad?
That's interesting you asked that. I have never thought of it that way. But yeah, he had an approach. You know, there are many similarities and differences in our approach. One of the main similarities, I would say, is that we have both always felt that, you know, nature is supreme. So whatever we create, there must be that humility that we talk to nature. We design besides nature, we don't go against it. So that's been an approach that we've had as a common thread between us.
Did you feel like he was more of the things you said that you don't necessarily do? Was it him? That straight line, that strong, the strength, and you're the curve?
Yes, I think there has been this very strong distinction in our approach. And even in the sense of, he had his own way, I guess, his own thought process of how he conceptualized design. Yeah. So in my case, I have always believed that design is more participative. It's not one of those old school of thoughts where, you know, I am the master designer and it comes only from me. It's more a participation of designers in our office, about talking to the client, about discussing the pros and cons of different approach, and then you move.
I feel that, you know, like it's important to be in touch with who you are and so you can create to your highest potential.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just creating, because, you know, in our industries and in this country, there are great opportunities of making lots of designs, whether it's buildings or clothes, and for lots of different markets. Like you created, you did the building for the Gautam Buddha University, and then now you're doing the Ayodhya project. They are quite diverse and they came from different mindsets. One sits on the philosophy of true heritage of India and its mythological ethos, and the other sits with the spiritual journey of India, you know, with Gautam Buddha. So there will be lots of opportunity. If you're not true to yourself, you may land up making a similar connotation, a similar building, just because you feel that you got the project. So sometimes I feel it's not what you've been given to do, but what you are to do to give back.
You're absolutely right. That's the way it works. But another aspect of your work, see, Shantanu Nikhil today is a global brand. Now that journey, I can imagine, no, it certainly has moved in a direction where, you know, it's globally recognized. And that journey, for anybody in the creative line of design, is never so easy. I mean, from literally nothing, you've taken the brand to an international scale. Where do you feel were really the challenges, and where do you see the potential to it going forward even further?
I'll tell you the challenges. In 2005, Shantanu and I, we didn't have enough money to get groceries for a couple of weekends. Challenges happened then because we believed in a consumer who was at an age group of 25 and 28 back in 2005, who was independent, aware, wanted to get what she believed in, but that consumer didn't exist then. It was still the mothers buying for their daughters. But we stood there and waited till the girl grew up from 23 to 26 and she made her own decisions at that time. So that started happening in 2009 is when we really started seeing the thrust come upon us with our belief system. And where are we going to go? I think Shantanu would be better with.
I think we've been in this industry for almost 20 years, maybe 21st year now. But I guess the second innings is is coming with a lot more responsibility. Up until now, I think it was an interesting discussion we were having prior to this question, was how design up until now has been commercialized so much in India that design becomes the last point of discussion in many a conversation. While everywhere else in the world, design becomes the first point of discussion around which everything else is built. I think India, for the longest time, has followed the former, which is design not being the epicenter of any discussion or thought process. The second innings of ours is going to take that decision, and it's going to take that journey forward with design becoming the most important facet, be it fashion, architecture, or for that matter, anything.
That's very, very interesting. And you know, you both have such a strong passion for design. So I hope this platform is going to allow your creativity and your sense of design to even flourish further than what it has. And really, I think the journey in the last 20 or 21 years that Shantanu and Nikhil as a brand has brought into Indian fashion has been, you know, something which has been so impactful that we really look forward to creations that come around in the future from your studio. So it's been such a pleasure to have both of you talk about fashion, talk about design more than even fashion, and of course your passion for it. Thank you, Shantanu.
Thank you for sharing your intimate moments about your life with us.
And thank you for bringing Deciphering with design and the intricacies of what this design ecosystem is all about to the forefront. And I think kudos to you as well.
No, because we all feel that India has historically also had that really rich repertoire of design in every field that we were to look back at. And today it seems to have somewhere down the line got marginalized. So I think this kind of deciphering journey can probably bring it back to what is our common passion, you know, out there in the forefront. So thank you both.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Do stay with us on the other side of the break.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching Deciphering Design with Dikshu. Dikshu, today you've had a very interesting conversation with Shantanu and Nikhil. You've discussed about architecture and of course design and fashion and the correlation of the two of them. Something that I really want to ask you first, something which is common between the two of them, is now technology. You know, it's great that we see that how technology is helping us make and do things faster, but it somewhere seems to be eating up the jobs of craftsmanship and craftsmen in both the fields. How do you think that can be, you know, sustained and attained still and yet move forward?
So Richa, both in fashion and architecture, in India, craftsmanship, I think, has been at the heart of it all. That has what has evolved designs both in fashion and architecture. So I think being such a central part of it, it's our responsibility that we nurture that. We cannot allow technology, much as it is around us all the time, and it should be as well, we should not allow technology to just sort of overtake and overwhelm the craftsmanship. And what I feel can be done is that while our craftsmen create indigenous designs and there's a lot of creativity in it, but we can actually use technology to enhance their skills. So if, for example, again, be it in fashion or again in architecture, that the craftsman's designs can first be laid out, they can be seen as samples, technology can check it out before the actual work is produced. That is going to help so much both in terms of economy and saving of time, and yet retain the creativity and importance of the craftsman. So like this, I think there are many ways that we can still have our craftsmen being at the central theme of the design creativity, but have them use technology to harness their skills.
That'd be great. Another thing about fashion and architecture, they do have a correlation. Tell me something, over the years, have you noticed, is there something that you have done that feels that has been derived from fashion or vice versa?
I also believe the same, that fashion and architecture are very, very closely related. In fact, one instance I remember, which is sort of a funny one, is that when I was studying architecture in SPA, long time back, there we actually collaborated at that time with JJ Valaya, because he was studying in NIFT, I was in SPA, and we collaborated together on a project, which was very, very interesting. But even today, for me, even the zari work, for example, that we have in our textiles, really inspires me. So one of the projects is where we have designed a large indoor arena, which is of a capacity of 20,000, and the facade of it, being an arena, you have sort of a homogeneous facade that is created, and that has completely been inspired by zari work. So I think somewhere different fields of design do offer inspiration to each other all the time.
So tell me something, if for your project, which is your project, ongoing project that you would say you're using sustainability or planning to, is there any that you are doing so right now?
No, today in every project that we are doing, each and every project that we are doing, we are using all kinds of sustainable measures. It depends from what type of project it is. If it's a hospital, or it's a hotel, or it is an industry which is manufacturing, depending on whatever project I'm designing, but across the board we are making sure that there is, the sustainable design measures are there, and we keep trying to increase the bar with every new project. You can't innovate every single time, but certainly the ethos or the effort has to be there, that you're trying to raise that bar of sustainable design in your projects.
Thank you, Dikshu. It's always a pleasure talking to you and understanding these things which seem so, we would never put focus to it. Something like what we discussed today about fashion and the relation of architecture together. I would say for majority laymen, people feel when they talk about design, it's only fashion designers. They don't understand that architecture also has so much and so much correlation with it also. Thank you so much, Dikshu. And thank you to all our viewers for watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed watching it as much we did while making it. See you same time next week.